Hiya Jamie, lovely to meet up with yourself and Gio and do some work on your games. Hopefully you enjoyed the session as much as I did. I thought it was a great day. Lots of fun to be had and lots of learning about the system. Hopefully you're left with some clear thoughts in regards to what sort of moves to practice, moves to consider when you're playing, and a much better understanding of what's required during the golf swing. So if we take a look at your original setup, we've got very square feet. This is positioning the knees inwards, which makes it quite difficult for the body to turn effectively. So as a result, we get quite a lot of movement off it. The head would move away from the golf ball. We use the idea of keeping your head in a box, trying to stay more stable during the backswing. We can see that we get things like head comes up and well to the right on the way back. The right knee has worked across substantially. That I suppose is 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. The head moves, therefore the knee moves, or does the knee move making the head move? It doesn't really matter, as long as we appreciate that if we can keep the head still, it makes things a hell of a lot easier when we're playing golf. The next thing we looked at or discussed was that during the backswing, because of the ineffective use of the body, the arms would lift to the top. So when the feet are positioned, as yours were, relatively square, knees pointing in, the amount of freedom the hips have is limited, which is why the lower body has to work a certain way, a bit of a funky way, to create the turn that you need. And whenever we have a limited capacity to turn, the arms start to lift off the torso. And the issues with that is that for a club level golfer, for any level of golfer really, irrespective of ability, talent, etc., time to practice, if you wanted to design a swing that was as chaotic as possible, you would move the weight from side to side and lift the arms off the rib cage. So you're introducing a lot of chaos when you're making moves such as you see there. So the first change we made was to position both feet out approximately 15 to 20 degrees. I would err on the side of caution, and if you were in doubt about where to put the feet, go towards more flare rather than less flare. I've come across very few people who flare their feet too much. Flaring out the feet repositions the knees, so the knees are turned out, not quite as much as the feet, but they are now turned out, and this now frees up the hips to turn. So we can now propel the butt of the club further during the backswing without lifting the arms. We can also start to work the body in a more appropriate manner, so the hips are more able to turn, making it easier for the shoulders to turn and making it easier for you to keep your leg action more passive. So we've got feet turned out, knees out as a result, weight forward, and all we're asking you to do is keep the weight forward during the backswing. And due to the position of the feet, the location of the weight, we can see that during the backswing we don't have the same amount of movement off. The left knee has started to calm down. Now in this instance, this was sort of towards the end of your session and the arms had started to lift a little bit. You made better backswings than this in the grand scheme of things, but what I liked about this particular swing, it was more of a real world scenario. You were standing on the mat, you were relaxing, you weren't really thinking too much about what to do. You'd been doing it for a number of hours and you were just trusting what you'd been doing. So, whilst I could find better examples of this, or more extreme examples of this, I'm really happy with that change. I thought that was great. We asked you to also keep the pressure on underneath the right arm against the rib cage. We've got a glove now trapped beneath the right arm, and we're trying to keep that squeeze on all the way to the top. And you can see when you do that, this gap here is much less in an ideal world, that right elbow would be 2 to 3 inches away from the rib cage at the top of the swing, but as long as we have it tighter, then that'll work. I'm happy with that. So reducing the chaos in the swing by repositioning the feet, both feet turned out at sort of 10 to 2, putting the weight forward a little bit more, and keeping the arms against the rib cage during the backswing. The thing we noticed then, and when further in your session, we talked about the move that you make through the ball, and you touched on how it looked flex forward, and to use your term, didn't look very sexy, which I thought, at the end of the day was right. Give me a bit of a chuckle, but I will be using that in future sessions. So here we go for the non-sexy through swing. Elbows start to divide a little bit to prevent the club digging in the ground. Neck's flexing forward, head's flexing forward, spine's flexing forward into the finish. So we've got you can see the head's moved forward of the box. The spine here is flexing forward. There's flexion in the hips, and there's a lot of flex in the right knee and the right ankle. And we talked about how, different plays, the club is coming into the ground during the downswing, so we have to learn to bring the club out of its descent, and there are a number of ways of doing that. We can do that by dividing the elbows, which a lot of players do, including yourself. We can do that by jumping up very quickly, which a lot of beginners do, resulting in a lot of shots that are topped, etc. Or we can do it the correct way, which is using the ground effectively, pushing up with the lower body, tucking the hips underneath, stretching the spine out, etc., etc., as will become very evident when we show you the next piece of footage. So what we've done here is we've moved the ball well back in the stance, so we've now got a very steep angle of attack. So this club, left to its own devices, will just crash into the ground. So what we've got to do is figure a way of bringing the club out of its descent. What we do here is good stance, good position at the top. The club now is going to crash into the ground, but what we start to do is we start to push up with the lower body, straighten the legs. You can see how much less flex we've got in the knees, and stretch out the spine. So we've extended the spine, we've extended the legs a little bit. You can see the ankle now as well is starting to extend. Totally different geometry to what you see there on the far left hand side of your screen. So you're starting to learn to bring the club out of its descent by using the ground, pushing up with the legs, tucking the hips underneath, stretching off the spine, creating that sexy finish that you're looking for in your golf swing. We talked about the three-dimensional aspect of moving the ball around in the stance. Anytime the ball's played forward in the stance, we're going to be hitting up and across, and anytime the ball's positioned back in the stance, we're going to be hitting down and out. When we talked about how to use that to benefit your shot making, to develop your skills, and more importantly to learn how to push up out the ground. So most golfers don't have the weight far enough forward, they don't move the weight far enough forward in the through swing to ever learn to extend properly, because they're always frightened of the club digging in the ground behind the ball. With the weight further forward, and the ball in a more appropriate position, as we can see here on the bottom left hand footage, we're not worried about the club digging in the ground behind the ball. We've got the weight further forward. We're now going to push up out the ground to bring the club out of its descent, resulting in a through swing that has less of that original flexing forward. So what we see here is this original swing with more of this drill movement in it. So the drill with the ball back is doing it in a very extreme manner, combating our natural tendencies, resulting in a much better looking through swing towards the end of your session. So bottom left hand side of this screen is a sort of real world scenario developed by, just in the grand scheme of things, a relatively short time. I mean, you were down for a long session, but in the grand scheme of things, quite a short period of time, resulting in a much more stable move, with the weight moving further forward in the downswing and the spine stretching off in a much more appropriate manner in the through swing. So the swing at the end of the session was dramatically different to the swing at the beginning of the session, and the drill here is really stretching the boundaries of your ability to extend, really stretching things out to the other end of the spectrum. And the more of this you add, the more of that move will become apparent in this actual swing. So just keep doing the drills, keep applying the same principles, keep the arms against the rib cage, keep the feet float out and the weight forward, and keep hitting balls back in the grid that you see on the bottom right hand side of, bottom right hand corner should I say, of this recap. Sorry for the delay in getting back to you. As I said to Gio on the text, I've been really busy with a few things over at the club and at the range since we met, so apologies for the delay in getting it across. I will also forward some ideas about future visits if you want to come across with some pals, etc., and put some packages together for you regarding that. Hopefully we can get together again in the not too distant future. Good luck with it, Jamie. If you've got any questions, feel free to text or email, and I'll try and get back to you as soon as I possibly can. Well done.